So my name is Ramanan Moorthy. I kind of call myself the product leader and product practitioner. I'm still hands-on. I don't want to let go of that. So I don't just sit and let people know what to do, but also, do the product stuff as well. Today, I thought I will talk about sort of product practice a little bit, and that's what I'm going to share. I really couldn't resist this cool feature from Canva. So let's get started. So a bit of background about myself. So I've been in sort of software development for nearly 10 years and sort of 8 years in the sort of SaaS product development. And I particularly choose these two roles that I had recently because I was a product leader in these two sort of roles. I think I've lost back again. At OneRoom, I'm currently a chief product officer, been there for a year and a half now. I lead a team of 12 people across product engineering, operations, and support. We are a small business. We do live streaming and recording software for a very niche market. And also, I was the first product leader being hired for OneRoom as well. Some of the challenges I had when I started with OneRoom, that the tech and design debt was so much that it's been sitting there for nearly 10 years. So good news, after 1.5 years, we actually modernized the PHP platform onto React, and we've kind of put on number of new revenue-making feature for OneRoom. So it's actually evolving more than just a live streaming and recording platform. With Xero, I had a 5-year tenure, and then the last 2 years at Xero, I was a group product manager with an internal team. So we were a platform team supporting nearly 200 plus Xero strong marketeers and voice of customer research staff. And we were enabling them to do their job well with marketing and voice of customer technologies such as Salesforce Marketing Cloud and Qualtrics. And the context there is that I had sort of 4 reports reporting into me, shaping work for nearly 20 people. So me and my engineering leader kind of grow that team from 5 people to 23 at one point. We had the largest number of Salesforce engineers in the Southern Hemisphere. Collectively in sort of that portfolio. The challenges at the time was number of initiatives were delayed, stakeholder unhappiness and all that. We kind of turned that around, and I remember the EGM every time we meet after sort of a few months, he says that I don't get calls anymore over the weekend from the stakeholders. So really good run on those two sort of experiences. And the common thing between the both is that I was hired to build product practice or bring product thinking because there wasn't one already. So I thought I had enough content to talk about those two in today's sort of topic. Let's talk about what is product practice. So for me, it's about finding the right opportunity, prioritizing it, putting it through your build machine to build it and ship it, right? So that you're hoping that it will address some of the customer value or bring some customer value and create some business value at the same time as well. I really like sort of a visual representation of what product practice is from Ed Biden recently. Some of you might follow him. He's probably the latest product thought leader that I really admire. He has got really tactical sort of advice, and he kind of talks about it as a product machine, right? So you got the objectives coming from one side, something happened in that box, and then you hope the results is coming on the other side, right? As a product leader, you have you can control what goes in that box. And today, what I'm going to do, kind of open that box and see what's inside there. One caveat before I jump into it is that when I talk about creating impact can vary organization to organization. So just because I'm sharing my experience on product practices and principle that worked for me doesn't necessarily mean if you apply, you will have the same impact in your place. So just be mindful of that. And one thing I do is, start having those conversations with your leadership and teams around what makes tick for your product team, right? So one question that I ask is, what is success defined by? What does success look like for the product team in your organization? So make sure you have that conversation around impact. That is very important. So let's pull all that into a context. So the framework I like to think about product management stack is there's 3 layers. As a product leader, you're influencing all 3 layers of that. There is product strategy. You're building product strategy and giving clarity to your team. You're also a product leader for your team and providing that clarity on where we are going, giving them the capability and coaching to achieve that, and also putting in forcing mechanisms to make sure that you're on the right track. Because it's only 40 minutes, I'm not going to be able to talk about all of them. So I'm going to focus on the middle part, which is the product mission Ed Biden was talking about earlier on. So if I kind of open the hood on that box, there are sort of 5 components that I see, or 5 stages that I see. So if we double click into that a little bit. So the questions I tend to ask when I'm looking at a new team or going into an organization is, what is happening to each one of those areas? right? And I kind of lied by saying building product practice, but most of the time, you're fixing the product practice. When you're going in there, there's something already exists, right? So you have a bunch of engineers, maybe stakeholders telling them what to do. So you're kind of looking at what's the scenario there at any point in time. So in terms of ideas, I kind of asked the questions around, how do we get work in this place? During interviews, one of the questions I like to ask, how decisions are made in this organization, which kind of tells me where the ideas are coming from and who is kind of prioritizing them. Then look into sort of what are we doing about validation? Are we just jumping from idea to execution? Are we doing something in the middle? Build, most of us are coming from the product delivery background, and we understand what happens in the build. But what I want to kind of see here is, how is product shaping the build? What are they doing to help that build being more effective? Go-to-market is an interesting one. As a product person, you can kind of contribute to the go-to-market and create a lot of alignment within the organization. So we'll look into that. And lastly, what are we doing about learning, right? So in terms of what I'm going to talk about in the next few slides, I was going to look at every one of those 5 boxes and see what are the challenges I come across when I'm fixing those areas, and how did I approach it, right? Cool. Let's jump into sort of ideas. So one of the common challenges that I see in terms of how the ideas comes into your team is that it's often come as a solution. Raise your hand if you're familiar with that, right? There's nothing wrong with it, right? The only thing that's wrong with it is that there could be better idea to achieve the same outcome. So as a product person, you don't necessarily have to make the decision. There's a bit misconception that product people need to come up with all the ideas. I kind of think about it like, sometimes you work in an organization where there's 10 to 15 years of experience, and it's hard to replicate that within a few months. So anyone can come up with an idea, but you need to, as a product person, you need to help them sort of transfer from a solution into an outcome, right? So the way I look at it is, don't fight the idea, but work with it with your idea requester to see if you can reverse engineer into an outcome. One of the template that I've got it from a product leader at Xero, which I kind of improvised here, is that build a hypothesis statement for every single idea that you have. That way, you are kind of looking into what is the impact this idea is generating. Then you are standardizing that idea so that you can compare that idea with some other ideas which achieving the same outcome. I also kind of added sort of assumption and opportunity so that I can compare these ideas against each other quite easily. So that's one thing that I handle when I see solution-based ideas are kind of inundated in your team. And the second sort of challenge I see is unclear priorities, right? There are usually 3 reasons why you get unclear priorities. One, you don't have a strategy, or your strategy is constantly changing. And second is that you don't have a strong hold on prioritization in your team or in your portfolio. And the third one is you're not giving the transparency to the rest of the organization what is happening in product. So product is it's kind of it's a mythical thing for most of the people. So they need to kind of understand what are you building, and the transparency is missing. So if you look at sort of each one of that, so the first one, creating strategies is a product leader's responsibility. But I also understand that it's not always possible to build one quickly when you move into a team. In my current organization, the business is a small business, so the product and the business are one and the same. So it's not in my entire control to build product strategy, because that would impact the business. All the way from investors to board to everyone reporting to CEO wanted to build that business strategy. So it takes time. So what can I do? Then I look for alternative ways of achieving the same outcome. What strategy gives you is focus. Right? So how can we get the focus? So we break down our work into quarters, and we do quarterly planning, and then trying to find out one to 3 business goals that we want to fix in that quarter. So that way, I'm getting the focus for the team that's needed, that could have been given by the strategy. Second thing on prioritization, so we use Jira Product Discovery in my current company. Previously at Xero, I used Asana. It doesn't matter which tool you use, but have a way of kind of collecting these ideas in one place, categorizing them and triaging them. How does that help? It helps with the prioritizations. For example, there are frameworks that you can use within these tools to score each ideas against impact and effort. Jira Product Discovery does a great job of that. But for me, prioritization, it's more of an art than a science. So there are 3 principles that I always follow when it comes to prioritization. you should be able to justify your priorities with anyone at any level, right? So you can't just walk into a board meeting or or a senior product review and then say the framework told me so that I prioritize this. So it has to be a good, justifiable reason. So a good example is at OneRoom, we had such a strong need to bring in revenue and focus on revenue features, but modernization was a key thing that's stopping us from growing long term. So we actually prioritized that modernization, and every quarter there's a board meeting, and I had to kind of go and explain 3 times in a row why we prioritized that. So able to justify like clearly and able to kind of reason that is very important when it's come to prioritization, and that's why I think it's more of an art than a framework or science. The second thing is alignment with key stakeholders. At Xero, in that previous the last role that I had, we had around 8 to 12 GMs and EGMs fighting for priority in a big room meeting, right? So sometimes shuttle diplomacy works, where you actually trying to see if you can win some of those conversations outside and have that sort of alignment with key stakeholders outside those meetings. So that's also, something worked as well. And lastly, I used to kind of bring everything for the sake of transparency for prioritization. Then I realized actually divide and conquer works better. So I stopped talking about tech dev stuff with business audience and kind of had that assumption it's implicit 20% is already covered for your product people to work on tech debt. So just talk about sort of what matters for that audience and prioritize kind of like for like things together. Lastly, in terms of building the transparency so that people know what you're doing, some sort of roadmap there where you can kind of talk about what are you busy with right now in terms of product delivery and what are you kind of focusing on discovery next quarter would be really good. Again, I use the sort of the Jira discovery for that. I really like the now, next, later roadmap, and one of the things the Jira Product Discovery does well, it gives you different flavors of roadmap. So you can actually create one for your board, one for your salespeople. That's only things that you're committed. So there's a few things you can do. The analogy I like to think about when it's come to sort of that roadmap, it's be like a bamboo. Be strong, but be flexible if needed to be, because organizationally, you want to do the right thing. Cool. Then moving on to validation now. So the common thing that I see here, like I mentioned earlier on, is that you jump from ideas to execution straight away without any sort of validation. Now, why is that a problem? There's this number that I had in my mind for a very long time, that a pod costs you $1 million a year to run, right? A lot of people don't realize how much wastage that, if you make a wrong decision, how much money you're sending down the drain. That number might have gone up by now with salaries increasing, right? So it is very important as a product person to slow down things to make sure that we are picking the ideas for the right reasons. So you might be seen as a blocker, you might be seen as someone who is slowing down, and that's okay. They will thank you later for making sure that you're reducing the failure later. You might have seen some stats of really good product companies like Amazon and Airbnb. Even their product success rate is not more than 40%, right? So imagine for other companies, what is the long-term success rate of these features you are building? One other technique that I use is when there's a new idea, it's out, I tend to create a one-page strategy. That one-page strategy usually works for feature strategies quite well, not necessarily for the entire product strategy. And thanks to Talks, who kind of inspired me in the beginning about this template, and then I think I improvised a little bit here. This really helps to create an internal alignment and slow down before you go into execution. Often I share this with my stakeholders, and I get feedback around, hey, the primary beneficiary that you had is wrong. We actually think that is not OneRoom, that is actually the customer, or other way around, right? So it creates good healthy arguments or conversations between the teams, and you're being super clear on why you are picking this idea. The second thing I see in validation that quite a challenge in terms of building good validation practices is that confirmation bias. What I mean by that is that you are doing some validation, but either you're doing it with the intention, anyways, you're going to build it, this is just for the decoration purpose, or you actually think that or the wrong people are doing it. So let's have a look at that. So number one thing, Marty Gagan talk about validation as sort of the 4 different types. At least do one validation activity for each of those categories. So as product people, we are responsible for value and viability. So by articulating sort of the opportunity on a one-page strategy and circulating internally, you are kind of validating the value internally. See if you can do one more externally as well in terms of the value, right? Viability, talk to your lawyers, whatever that will stop you from this feature living long-term, find out that. Feasibility and usability are usually straightforward. Your engineers will be building a proof of concept to make sure that it works, and usually that's in parallel with viability risk. And usability is something that you can build to show people what does it look like altogether. So do at least one of these each, and I've made sure that that's something that you can do from a product team point of view to reduce the chances of failure later. And then trying to bin as many ideas as possible or park them as possible, right? Because your long-term success is depending on how good you become in terms of finding the right opportunity that survives long-term. Second point is, there are a number of cost-effective validations you can do. So we've done all 4 of that at OneRoom, where we normally do user interviews when we have a concept that we are playing around with. We don't normally, in those, we call it exploratory interviews. And exploratory interviews, we don't normally bring anything to show to them. We just ask them questions around the sort of the context of that concept that we are trying to bring in. So we ask them whether do you have any problem around that feature that we are planning to build without really talking about the feature, and then sense check whether are we on the right track here. User journey, you can share that if you have multiple personas that you want to validate. We've done a lot of Figma flows. These are the clickable prototypes in Figma that you actually share and get feedback on. And quite recently, we even hired an external company called Userlytics to hire testers and provide feedback on some of the modernization we are trying to do. To my surprise, it was actually quite cheap. It was like 7 participants with a very specific criteria that we wanted, age group and experience and all that. And it cost us around, I think, $500 to $1,000 for 30 minutes recording of testing the product. So remember, $1 million versus the small amount you can pay to reduce the chances of failure. And one of the big success from OneRoom that we had in the early days was building a customer advisory group. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that a bit later. But in terms of sort of validation, we use this customer advisory group, who are basically our customers who come forward to give feedback on some of our features. And we do concept testing, design, as well as make them to use our features first, so that we can actually refine it before wider releases. Build. So like I said, when we think about build, we think about, okay, how can we bring better processes? How can we bring sort of good measures to make sure that our deployment and delivery cadence are on track and all that? What I wanted to kind of talk about here is what can you do as a product person to improve that build sort of stage? The common thing I see is that your team is output focused. Right? What do we mean by that? So every time you bring in a piece of work for refinement, everyone is so focused on, okay, how can I get this done, get this work completed, right? So the mindset that we are trying to propose is think about what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve, and then how can you help get to that outcome faster, quicker, or effectively as well. I like that first diagram. Anthony, you've drawn this at Orion Health. I remember that the 2-wedge diagram where it kind of represents that as a product person, right, your involvement of an initiative goes down over time, and your developers' involvement kind of increases over time. So it's quite important that you pass as much as context and knowledge upfront, so that the analogy I like to think about is winding the toy. You wind as much as possible in terms of outcome, so that the developers run all the way thinking about the outcome all the time. So if it is one place that you need to be so obsessed about outcome, it's the build stage. So keep talking about why are we doing this? Keep talking about measure of success as a product person, and see if your team can pick that up and go with it without you being there all the time. The second thing I see, which kind of spoken a lot in sort of product articles and materials, is the handover mentality. Right, one discipline finished the work. Let's say design finished it, pass it to developers. Developers finished, pass it to testers. How can you, as a product person, help the team collaborate more? And having these people up early in your process really helps for everyone to come together and collaborate more. There's a saying that I remember that if your developers are hearing about a piece of work first time in refinement, you're doing something wrong. They should be hearing it like really early around the why stage. And then specifically one activity that we do is the Crazy 8 exercise. If you're not familiar with it, basically it's a design thinking tool, I believe, or brainstorming tool where people come together to provide large quantity of ideas in a short period of time, crazy ideas, and that's just a way of brainstorming and making sure that you're thinking about everything. For us, like, we invite developers, testers, everyone that we have in the team to contribute to the solutioning if it is a greenfield project. So that way they feel like they're contributing to the sort of the solutioning part. And lastly, I love this. This is something that I really trying to emphasize, that the success of you as a product leader is decided for me is by, are you leaving a sustainable team behind? Right? Are you making yourself dispensable? And the only way you can do that is by creating business owners within your company, right? Everyone should be thinking about their organization and product as they are the owners. So how can you do that? And if you haven't read the book, Turn the Ship Around, there's a good TED Talks on YouTube. Please have a look at it. And the concept is quite simple, that you should stop giving answers to your team, and it's really hard. And I struggled for a very long time. And even now, like there are temptation for me to just give out answer, because I've kind of done like a lot of roles in the past, BA to product owner, product manager, group product manager. So I wanted to give them the answers, but I pull back and think about, okay, do I really need to make this decision? How can I help leave a sustainable team long term, right? So according to the book, like, there's two questions that you can ask when someone have an idea or struggling: is this the right thing to do, and is it safe to do, right? There are exceptions all the time, and there are times where you have to make decision. That's okay, but keep practicing this so that you will create that thinking muscles for your team, and then they would start think of their product as their own product. The last thing on the bill is around the longer cycle time. This is one of the things that frustrates me. It feels like always things taking ages to finish. And when you kind of look into it, like, you don't have either a good sort of checking mechanism or inspecting mechanism, as Scrum call it, or you don't have that appetite defined upfront. So process, I know there's a bit of a interesting topic going around about process people. My feeling is that you don't want to implement process just for the sake of it, but if you can lead the team with some really like lean process and then let them evolve that further, then that's okay. So normally I work in the team if there's no process exist. For example, at OneRoom, it was a relaxed Kanban approach is what they had. So I've kind of implemented a simple framework where we have a sprint planning, and then we do refinement and stand up. So this way, you give clarity to the team on what are we going to do in the next 2 weeks or 1 week, and then helping them sort of break down as a product person, and then having those inspecting opportunity every day to see if we are on track or not. That way, you have some opportunity to catch any dependencies, any delays, and reduce that cycle time even further. And sense of urgency. This is a controversial one for me. That I'm quite. I have a sort of a thinking that if you don't give a time frame, work is going to expand to time, right? Things are going to take ages to complete. So I always kind of create that sense of urgency in the team, and sometimes it does backfire, and people does say that you're creating artificial deadlines, right? So then you kind of deal with it and see if you can kind of get them to give you a date, and then work with it. And the benefit of that is that you are always thinking about what the minimum thing that I can do to achieve this outcome, right? So we use t-shirt sizing a lot every quarter. So now that we got to a point, we understand what is the rough sort of lapse time for every t-shirt size. So when we talk about a new initiative, we t-shirt size it, and then we say, okay, so this is our sort of the deadline that we are creating. And then appetite is very important. Even if it is a small data that I need from a developer, and I say, don't spend more than half a day. So make sure you always give appetite for the work that you're requesting, whether it's a huge piece of work or whether it's a small thing. So because they need to know that how much are we willing to invest on that, right? And little things that you can do, like we don't do we don't wait until the next week for refinement. Next day refinement, and then we have this 2-day decision-making mentality. 1 page, 1 hour, it's a concept I think I've learned from online. Basically, it says, whatever you're doing, do it within a page, do it within an hour before you share with someone else for feedback. Because you don't want to spend ages building a strategy and then finding out that you've missed the mark on something big, right? So things that you can do to create urgency and bias for action. Again, trying to see if you can collapse that time in terms of building something and shipping it out. Cool. So I was chatting to a product leader recently for a coffee. He's not here, and he told me that it's quite easy to find product people who are good at product delivery. He said it's actually hard to find product people with good product discovery and product delivery. Then he said it's almost rare to find good product people with good product discovery, good product delivery, and good product go-to-marketing skill. Then that made me think that actually that's true, like, because we don't talk enough about this, right? So how can a product person help in that go-to-market sort of phase of that product practice? You can do awesome discovery, you can build amazing sort of software, but if you don't ship it and give it in the hands of customers, you're not going to learn from it and get the value, right? So there's the biggest challenge I've seen is this one, the fear of messing up, right? From stakeholders, they feel like your product or the feature you're building is still not good enough. You need a perfect solution before we can ship it. So that just slows you down. So what can you do as a product person to give them the confidence? A few years back, I went for a conference in San Francisco. I think DJ was here. I don't know whether he's here today. And Teresa Torres did an amazing talk, and she talked about sort of stakeholder management. There's 3 principles, she said. She's the guru of sort of continuous discovery, but specifically on stakeholder management. The 3 principles, she said, that stuck with me for a long time, right? Number 1, bring stakeholders early into the journey. Number 2, understand their constraint. When you work with sales, marketing people, they have a tough job as well. It's equally tougher or more tougher than your job. So understand their constraint. Where are they struggling? What do they need to get their job done? And number 3, show them confidence that you got it under control. So the things that I'm going to talk about is largely kind of based on those principles. So the first thing is that, have those conversation about the MVP, MLP, or MVP, MMP conversation early. If you don't do that and you build your product with your first slice that you're going to release, you may get into a stage where you might get pushback from the people around, okay, this is not good enough, and it's too late. You're wasting time later on, right? Bring them early, have the conversation about what is enough for us to go live, and what are we doing here? Are we releasing this to learn, or are we releasing this to complete a piece of work? Sometime, you would be doing, let's say you're releasing pricing package. You just want to complete it, right? So that's also okay. So the way I do that at OneRoom is that we bring the stakeholders together. We have those sort of conversation around, so between marketing, sales, and design, what is enough, and we kind of negotiate and agree that let's call it MVLP, and then we do a horizon planning to show what are the other phases coming up down the line, which kind of takes the stuff that didn't get into the first release. So that's pretty important as well. The second thing, which I kind of talked about, don't wait until you starting your release planning to talk about go-to-market planning. I hear from product marketers that they're frustrated because the product owner just reached out to them 1 week before they're releasing it, right? So they have to scramble to create the artifacts and go and do that. So start bringing them early. So what we do about it, it's so I have this 2-level approach. I have a monthly go-to-market high-level meeting where we talk about the last quarter work, what we've done and what are we doing about it, and also the current quarter planning in terms of go-to-market. And then I let the product people then deal with the specific marketeers or the customer success team or the customer support team in terms of what is the specific go-to-market plan for that initiative. And that is very important, bring them into early. And lastly, it's not enough to bring early and have those clear conversations, because you initiative could take a month or 2, and right, if you don't constantly keep in touch, that's going to be a problem. So product reviews are there. So we do these few things. So we share the 1-page strategy for feedback upfront. Then we have a conversation about what is the must-have, should have, could have, and create that horizon planning. Then the product team build a prototype, usually if it is demoable, and then bring it back to the stakeholders, get feedback, make sure that we're all aligned. We do the go-to-market planning. And then we also do feature flagging. That means, we don't have to wait for developers to go and release every time we want to release those phases. The business has in control, or product has it control. This is probably a bit more detailed than I need to kind of share at this stage, but I thought some people might be interested on it. Very similar to the previous point. fear of messing up. Sometimes, this organizational alignment is missing. That's one of the reasons why we are not successful in go-to-market. So as product team, how can you create better organizational alignment is what this slide is all about. So there's two things that worked, and one thing I kind of touched on it already. So we do collaborate on the go-to-market planning. And that's not just with product marketeers. Anyone who is touching the customers and will be impacted by your release would be coming together in that planning session. So this template you're looking at is basically a process we go through just to make sure that we tick all the boxes and we don't miss anything for every initiative. We ask the questions around, are we doing a trial first? Is there any go-to-market commitments this particular piece would have? So for example, there's a conference coming up and I need to present this feature. So that is what Martin Gagan call it, the high integrity commitment, right? And then is there any go-to-market dependencies? For example, we need to sort out the pricing before we can release this feature. So that means there's some dependency. So we understand that. Then we talk about what type of comms we want to do. We want to talk about the channels. We talk about sort of artifacts, and then who is owning all that. So going through that process, just make sure to my Teresa Torres' third principle, it gives stakeholders confidence that you got it under control, and then it builds trust. And how we can do sort of better go-to-market releases. That one I promise I'll come back to later. So customer advisor group. So basically this is your customers coming forward to give you feedback and be part of this sort of early adapter program. When I started at OneRoom, the marketing team, customer success and product, we got together and we decided that we need one of those to make sure that we are trialing, make sure we're validating our assumptions. So the process we went through is what I've got here at a high level. So we started by looking at sort of 7 to 12 customers. I think that gives you a good sample, and with different mix, corporate and small and medium businesses, we made sure they have the participatory mindset, because nothing worse than having someone but they don't have time to give you feedback on. We also set the pricing expectation that some of these features may become a paid version, so you're having it for free or trialing it for a few months. Then in terms of kicking it off or facilitating those sessions, sometimes we have a group session, sometimes individual. The group sessions are more for like kicking off a feature or talking about it to see if there's sort of collective thinking there. But most of the time it's individual sessions where we're validating sort of particular sort of path we are taking. We also do, like I said earlier on, exploratory and validation type of interviews. And also we do benchmarking so that we know whether the feature we are building made any difference or not for that particular customer. And then, I probably won't go into too much detail. Then we give it in the hands of our sort of customer success team to trial it and get feedback, and then see if you need to pivot the feature. Now, why I'm bringing that under sort of the go-to-market stuff is when we introduced the customer advisory, initially it was all about concept validation and design testing and early adopter program. But as we run this for a few months, we realized the feedback we are getting from this customer advisory group, it's so powerful, the testimonial and the analytics data in terms of usage. We felt like there's something in there that we could use to sell it to more customers, right? So suddenly the sales become excited, the marketing team become excited. So we all got together. It kind of as a side product, it created collaboration within the organization. Now everyone is looking at the sort of our trial data to see what can I get it from here that I can then go and use it in my wider releases as a marketing material or sales pitch. So the customer advisor group really helped for the organization to come together and align together. Moving on to the last sort of box that we are looking at in terms of the product practice learning. One thing that I saw in some places is that, well, most of the time, we build, we ship, and then we forget, right? We don't really spend time looking at sort of the stuff that we send out to the market, right? And it's so surprising that like non-product people tend to kind of think that once you've finish something, then that's it. You don't need to kind of touch it. I think that comes from that project management mentality where you finish a project and you move on to next, right? As product management, it's not that. It's a living thing, so you got to continuously maintain. So the biggest thing that you can do is not only for your team, but also help your organization understand that that you're building to learn, so that you're going to be iterating further. So set that expectation up front. I put the picture of WD-40. Does anyone know the story of that? No, so yeah. So WD-40 is actually the 40th attempt of that formula that the chemist came up in the lab, right? And they actually didn't brand it; they just released it as it is. So it's same for software product as well. You are not going to be successful in your first attempt. You're going to have to repeat and iterate on some of those things. And it's important that you educate your sort of leadership and other people who's not familiar with product management that this is how it's going to work. So one of the little exercises I've done recently over that, after 1.5 years at OneRoom, I looked at every single initiative we've done at 1.5 years on the Jira product discovery, and then I put a column to say, okay, what was the original intent? And then check to see if we have achieved that or not. And looked at sort of collectively what percentage of the initiative that we've achieved so far, and that came to be around 28% or whatever. So then I talked to that, I took that artifact and then talked to the leadership team about, look at that, we still got job to do in terms of what we want to try to achieve. And also, you can do little things like constantly reminding people around where we are with some features. One of the cool tactic that I learned from a product leader at Xero is doing this regular Slack video updates. So we're talking about sort of how's your features are doing, any mechanism in which you can communicate with the organization that the job is not done, it's good. And lastly, make sure to set the measure of success upfront, probably ideally on your one-page strategy, and then if you can, get your team to set those key results so that you don't have to kind of always remind them that, hey, you need to learn something. Your team will be then feeling accountability because they set the key results. And at Xero, we used to follow the OKR model. So what we do as a leadership team, we set the objectives, and then we do quarterly planning and let the team actually build the priorities under that objectives and then the key results as well. So it's actually populated by the team. And the last point on that is that missing data instruments is something that I observe as a common challenge. If you don't have these data instruments, how are you going to learn, right? So one thing that we've done really well at OneRoom that we are proud of is that building analytics all the way from the beginning. So every time we talk about a new feature, we actually mandate that there has to be analytics to it so that we can learn. And it's not just analytics, but also the qualitative feedback. So we make sure that the three things are always there. One is feature performance. That's basically seeing whether your feature is performing from a business goal point of view. And the feature adoption is more around the usage of your feature, the discovery, the activation, and retention of that feature. And then user feedback, usually the qualitative stuff. One other learning that we had was we were relying quite heavily on our customer success team to provide that qualitative feedback. So very recently, within the last month or so, we are now introducing in-product feedback so that qualitative feedback can come directly from our users into the product team so that you can actually handle that rather than having to kind of depending on your customer-facing teams. So those, I believe those are the 5 areas. So that's a wrap. And you got my contact details here. Feel free to connect with me via LinkedIn and email me if you have any questions. I know that intentionally I've kind of went for breadth rather than depth today because I want to kind of introduce all the different sort of areas of product practice. But I'm happy to help out. Shameless plug, I do product coaching as well. So if you're sort of aspiring product person or early to mid-level product person, I'm happy to help you there as well. I'm going to leave with this sort of cheat sheet, which you can take away. I'll leave it there later on so that you can come and have a look at everything we talked about in terms of the challenges and what I've done there as well.
Cool. Thank you so much, Ramanan. Thank you for that. Right, we'll take questions. Now, because we're a group run by product managers, we experiment as well. And this was the first time that we've used Teams live streaming. And my apologies for the people online. I didn't realize that the Teams interface, the streaming interface, doesn't have a Q&A thing. So if you are online and you'd like to ask a question, jump onto the Meetup page. In the comments down there, I've dropped a link to a Slido. Please drop your questions into the Slido. So while you're online getting that sorted out, we'll take questions from the room. And by the way, I'll need to pass the mic around so that people online and the recording will hear your questions. So I'm going to start here. You're closest.
Hi, Raman.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. I'm Karthik. My question is around the ideas and validation. So when you say that as a product owner or a product manager, like,
Yeah.
you'll be getting a lot of ideas. So when you receive ideas, do you expect the ideas to be backed up with data?
Better boys.
Data? Is that something that you expect when someone comes and say that, hey, you know what, I want this feature in this
Yeah.
product? And what will be your response? Will you ask them, like, yes, can we have some data for it? Like, what is the ask? What's the customer's expectation here?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. So I think the answer is depends, right? Where the idea coming from. If it's coming from, let's say, your developers or product person, I would be asking those questions. Okay, show me, pull from database some data to back up what you are saying. But if I'm looking at sort of my experience at Xero, where we had nearly 8 to 12 different portfolios of marketing teams, and they were giving us ideas all around. They didn't have the capability to go and look for the data, especially around the usage data, right? So we as a product team need to help achieve the data. So one of the ways that we help the prioritization in those big room meetings is by supporting each of those ideas with data. And that's what I mean by the opportunity sizing at the bottom. So we look at sort of what is the total market size for that, and we look at sort of how many what do we know around building that opportunity into more of a quantifiable thing.
Yeah, there's one way to fail there. It's use that where's the data as a implicit piss off with your idea, please. I've seen that happen. It doesn't work. Sarah.
Hi, you mentioned that you've kind of brought in product practice to a couple of companies. I was just wondering if it's been mostly an education piece, like you share this is how product practice should work and then everyone follows that, or whether you've had resistance, and if you have, how you've overcome that.
Yeah, good question. I should probably brought that up in my topic. So when I'm talking about product practice, because there's a room of product people, you understand, right? When I'm going into an organization, if you're talking about, okay, I'm here to build product practice, that doesn't work, I think, most of the time, because you can't, like, I think Anthony says this quite well, you can't talk product, but you have to do product, right? So it's about the impact, what impact you're going to bring. So when I start, like I said, in the early slides, you'll be having those conversations to understand how can product help, and what does impact look like for that organization, right? And then you see what you can do to bring to that team. So to answer your question, yeah, you would not be talking that, hey, I'm going to build this product practice here, I'm going to do this, but you will be kind of identifying areas of gaps and some of the challenges, and see how you can bring in your approach into it without really talking about it as a product management.
I've just come back from the Product Leaders Summit in San Francisco, and Shreyas Doshi was there doing a talk, and that was the point of his talk. It's like, don't tell the rest of your executives about this perfect product practice. They don't care.
Yeah.
They just want good product.
They want impact.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for the talk. I really enjoyed it. Do you have any tips for maturing product processes at companies that are where the roadmap is purely revenue driven?
Maturing product practices.
Yeah, where it's purely...
I think you said processes, but so there's two different questions in there. I feel I think I kind of touched on, if you're building processes in your organization, make sure like really clear that what value is it bringing. Don't build it for the sake of it. Like in Xero, we have this amazing process that we built of multi-year. And I remember we had a call with Marty Kagan one day, I think World Product Day, and then we asked him for feedback. And he said, "It's nice, but I don't see how is it going to help." Something along that lines, right? So make sure that your process that you're building, it's actually serving a purpose and it's not overpowering it, right? In terms of your second part of your question, like revenue focus sort of priorities, right? I'm kind of in a similar situation as well right now. The market is tough. Every business is looking for revenue at the moment, and you got to really fight for non-revenue stuff. Like, why do you need it, right? So my sort of advice is, if you have conviction on something that's not revenue driven. So let's take, for example, the modernization. We had reasons that the platform was 12 years old. Developers don't want to work on PHP. It's really hard to find people working on PHP. So we want to move to React, and there were some performance issues, right? So the way we approach that is by having a quick win at first. So we said, okay, how about one part of the product that are customer facing? Let's modernize that and show it. We can do it very quickly. So we've done that. We were then able to show that we could add revenue features on top of that modernization. and bought the buy-in from the board and the others, hey, this is actually useful. Then we broke down the rest of the platform, which is sort of the 80% of the work, into smaller chunks over 9 months to complete it. Right. So I think if you have conviction on other non-revenue things, you just got to find a way to bring that in without impacting. So by the way, we did all that while introducing 3 revenue streams. So your business could actually see that there are work that's being done on the revenue.
And know the context as well. If your business is running out of money, it's a bad time to have a tech debt conversation. Yep. Just saying.
Yeah.
Other questions from the room? Yeah.
Hi. My question related more to your Xero experience in building practice in a big kind of SaaS product. How do you share responsibilities or domain areas for your product people in the team so that they feel autonomy, but also they work on their kind of projects and development that are important in that particular financial year or in the particular year of kind of development product in the company? Because I found that it's harder in the bigger SaaS products.
Okay, I want to play back your question to make sure that I understand. So your question
basically
is
how not to get to the feature factory, but being in the product domain where product managers can really own the result and the long-term success metrics.
Okay. To be honest, I don't think I have a great answer, but I'll give you my best answer to that. This empowered product team is a hot topic, right? Everyone wants to become an empowered product team, but I haven't actually seen many product teams, so I don't know what, Anthony, you have. So my philosophy is that empowered product team is a journey that you need to take, right? You don't need to get to that destination, but you can do things towards that goal. So at Xero, we had a very tough situation in that team because that was an internal platform team, so that wasn't really a product team. We were trying to bring in product thinking into it, where those strong stakeholders has this tradition of calling the shots, calling the priorities, and getting things done from that team. So what we tend to do is every stages of the 5 stages I talked about, we looked at, okay, what are the small things that I can do? If I can't make prioritization myself, can I bring prioritization? Can I make the prioritization process better? Right? If I can't do validation because our stakeholders already decided this is the path they're going to take, can I actually show them that these are the risks with that? So my answer to your question, if you're in a feature factory, see what are the things that you have influence over and work towards that empowered team, rather than getting frustrated that you could never get there, right? Because if you're going to fight that and trying to change that, you probably won't be, it won't be a good career move.
So the extension of the question was, how, if you were building it from scratch, how would you build it to be empowered?
If I'm building from scratch, first of all, like I said earlier on, you most of the time you're going into a practice that's already there and you're trying to fix it, right? So building from scratch would be, let's say, you're starting something up and then you're hiring new developers. How would I do that? I'll be kind of looking at sort of the top level outcome the business want to achieve. That's the business goal. And then creating that vision for the product, where the product needs to take, and building a strategy. So through that strategy, you would create some objectives and then assign objectives to each team so that the team can own the objective and come up with their own priorities. All right, so that's how I would do it. But reality, how are you going to get that all the time? Probably not, right? So you got to work with what you have and then see how best you can get closer to that empowered team point of view.
I've personally recently just taken a team through that. So if anyone is interested in that topic, please come have a chat with me afterwards. I can give you some examples of how it worked. Let's go over here.
Good presentation. So there's a lot of information actually. I have 2 questions before that, touching that revenue part. So how to focus on the revenue product management side? Basically, it's boiled down to where your business is lying down, whether it's a 0 to 1 or a 1 to 100 or a 100 to 1000. So each stage have a different approaches and different way of doing it. So again, that's same to your cost, for you. So this particular approach, it's really amazing. I think it's mostly fit in the, I believe, from the under 2000 scale. So how you think this can be fit into the other bucket? One. Second question, what do you think that AI will impact the product management side?
What do I think?
Artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, yeah.
How that going to impact that to improve the productivity and also simplify the things? What's your perspective on it?
Yeah. Good questions, both of them. So I don't have experience taking a product from 100 to 1,000. So I can talk about sort of 0 to 1 and then maybe 1 to 10. The simple answer for that would be, if you're a sales-led company and you're trying to make sales with the product that you're built, and 0 to 1, your contribution as a product team would be trying to build those revenue-making commercial features as much as possible, right? Then from 10 to 100 would be product-led growth. That's how you could help. How can you kind of create the self-discovery and sort of getting more sales without having to really scale the sales team? So that's probably my only answer. In terms of AI, we actually I went to an AI conference recently. So 2023 apparently is all about proof of concept. 2024 all about people building stuff. But I do use a few AI tools, and I still feel that there are solutions looking for problem most of the time, right? So in terms of how is that going to impact product, you should be always thinking about, so every time you're thinking about a piece of work or how you're approaching, you should be thinking about, can AI help here in this situation?
And I'll talk a little bit about Product Aotearoa at the end, but on our Slack channel, we've literally just set up a channel called Product and AI. So if you're in the Product Aotearoa Slack, please have a look for that. There's some great discussions there talking about the application of AI in the product world. Some really smart people who are working on that right now. Rudolph, you had a question.
Yeah, Ramanan, good to see you.
Yeah.
Picking up from her question, but on the opposite size-wise, not as big as Xero, but and also similar to what you landed at OneRoom. We're working on a very, very, very old technology. Talked about 10-year-old technology and platform, including the way they build the solution, cloud-based. And I'm kind of the first person coming in from a product perspective, even though there's a CPO and a CTO, and managed to synthesize from both of those people what might be the simplest digestible context of objective/initiative. So it's a mix of revenue, MRR, and then a mix of tech debt that we don't want to call it. We call it scalability, and also feature that are coming from two angles. You got the maturity of the project, or as well as catching up to keep at ahead of the competition. With one team, what will be your recommendation for them to kind of balance those different initiatives, objectives, so that we'll still kind of see the progress?
So just to play back your question, so if you have that revenue stuff you need to do and scaling stuff you need to do and other features as a one team, how do you balance all that, right? So the balancing act is probably one of the difficult thing in product management, and why product people are hired, right, to do. I believe it's Ben Foster, I might be wrong. There's a guy who has got a bit of a framework that's online. I'll see if I can put the link up here. Kind of talks about, depending on your maturity of your company, if you're early stage, you're actually doing a lot of feature. You're doing less tech debt because you don't have a lot of tech debt, right? As you mature, you're probably balancing a little bit. So I would say, if you're a matured company, you're looking at probably 30, 40, 40 or something along that lines, that split. But always, as a rule of thumb, 20% to improve the product long term, so that long-term value, and then rest can be the short to medium-term value work, whether it's revenue or new features, your experience improvement you're building.
See, we had a question online. Thank you for making that. This is an interesting one. So as an app developer and new founder of a startup, no funding and starting from scratch, like it's bootstrapping, the startup idea is close to my heart. How would you go to design the product? So I guess at that very early stage, maybe where do you start, I think is the question.
Yeah, so you would want to, first of all, it sounds like you've got an idea already, right? Close to my heart. So you've got an idea. That means, you want to, first of all, validate. So I would be probably, thinking about you in the sort of second column. How can you kind of get get some validation from the market that there's actually need for it. So I would be thinking about sort of product market fit, and is there much demand for you there? Sorry, it's probably very big topic to kind of dive in.
I think that's quite a big topic, but yeah, I would tend to agree. It's like, will somebody pay you for this?
Yeah.
They won't pay you for it, it's not going to work. Really simple. Right. I think we'll take one more question from the room, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, get out the back.
Tricky question.
Hey.
How do you move from project management to product management?
Ooh. Are you in project management at the moment? I think it's just the mindset thing, to be honest. First, if you could kind of accept that, I have been traditionally, I'm not saying that it's you, let's imagine a third person, right? I've been traditionally thinking about an initiative from start to end. I've been thinking about the 3 dimensions of project management, which is the scope, quality, and time. How can I move from this mentality into product management, which is kind of a living thing where I need to kind of bring in sort of, okay, I'm evolving this feature or the project that I'm building long term, right? So the mindset shift is what probably comes to my mind in terms of one advice that I can give. So then, go and read as much as possible about product management and kind of submerge into that sort of area, and then see if you can get a little bit of sort of secondment or something to work on it, right? To provide some examples. I've long time ago, I was working in the project management space as well, and I was a BA, so I can kind of empathize that journey is hard. And the thing about product journey is that every step is harder. It's not coming from BA to product owner, from product owner to product manager. Every step is hard. So you got to kind of, you can't use what helps you to come all this far. Right? You got to come up with new things to get you into the next stage.
Right. Oh, sorry, we're wrapping up. So maybe just have that conversation afterwards. Start thinking in the customer perspective. Yeah, good call. That's a really good place to end it, I think.
Yeah.
Can we have a big round of applause for Ramanan, please?